Snap. The kick is in the air, and the kick this time is no, sir-ree. No, sir-ree. Final score, Tennessee 20, Florida 17. Pandemonium reigns.
You're listening to the RTI Podcast, powered by RockyTopInsider.com.
Welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Podcast. I am your host, Ben McKee, joined on this edition of the Rocky Top Insider Podcast by the one and only Eric Kane. You can listen to him on Sports Radio WNML. He also contributes to Rivalry Thursday on TV here locally, and he also contributes to VolQuest over with the good folks at Rivals. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Glad to have you back on the podcast. Had you on before the season, and as always, you did a tremendous job, and always love your insight on the Vols, and you do a great job of covering Tennessee and breaking it down on the airwaves here in Knoxville. So thrilled to have you back on the podcast. Hope you've been doing well. The Vols have not been doing well. They enter Auburn week 2-4. And not a ton of hope and not a ton of excitement from the fan base. Quite a bit of apathy has set in amongst the fans, and it's pretty evident what the current state of the Vols is when you look at them on the field and when you take the pulse of the fan base. But how would you assess the current state of the Vols and how the season has gone to this point?
I mean, you take those callers every morning like I do, Ben. It's not great. It's not great. I mean, a lot of frustration. A lot, no one really has any high hopes right now. You see young quarterbacks doing what they're doing around the country. You see first-year head coaches doing what they're doing around the country, and there's a lot of frustration there when you compare it to a fifth-year quarterback and a third-year head coach. And I think a lot of that's valid, and it's totally understandable. It's just not a good situation to be in right now. And, you've got a game against Auburn on Saturday that we're going to talk about. And, it's outside of Vanderbilt. It's it's the most winnable game on the schedule from here on out, because the way Tennessee's been playing right now, there's nothing that could tell me that they have a chance against Texas A&M and Florida. So a big game coming up. Hopefully you'll get a better showing from Tennessee because I think everybody just wants on the root for again, and there's nothing to root for right now.
For sure. It was a blessing in disguise that this past weekend's game against Texas A&M was postponed to December 12th. It allowed Tennessee to get healthier. The bye week prior to the Arkansas game allowed Tennessee to be as healthy as it's been to this point in the season, and then with the unexpected open week because of the Texas A&M game being postponed, Tennessee is now even healthier. And I'll be interested to see how this game plays out. We'll talk about it a little later on, but I thought Tennessee was well on its way to winning against Arkansas until Jarrett Guarantano got hurt. To me, that was the difference in the game. The defense didn't play great, but when Jarrett Guarantano left the game, it completely changed the way that Arkansas played defense, because they completely sold out on stopping the run, something Tennessee was obviously very successful doing in the first half. And that's because they somewhat respected JG's arm. And say what you will about Jarrett Guarantano, opposing teams have seen him push the football down the field to Josh Palmer and Jalen Hyatt this season. And Barry Odom knows what he is capable, even going back to last year when JG threw for 400 yards against his Missouri defense. And when Harrison Bailey and Brian Maurer had to come into the football game, Barry Odom had zero respect for those guys' arm. And you saw them just completely load the box and try to stop the run. So if you can find a way to get that Tennessee offense from the first half against Arkansas this weekend against Auburn. I think Auburn is a little inflated right now in terms of their perception coming off of a win over a really bad LSU team. So I think it's a winnable game. I'm not going to pick Tennessee to win, but I do think it's a winnable game. But just kind of going back to that Arkansas game for a minute, Eric, what were your kind of thoughts on what went wrong for the Vols in that loss?
Third quarter.
As always.
Stop me if you've heard this before. The third quarter was atrocious. I mean, Tennessee's defense, as bad as it played in the third quarter, stepped up in the fourth quarter and allowed the offense to get back in the football game. There was, I believe, 2.5 sacks in the fourth quarter, 3 punts forced. But you can't play 3 of the 4 quarters defensively, especially when that one bad quarter you give up 24 points. I mean, there's no excuse in that, and it was awful. I mean, I agree with you. When Jared Garantano went out of the football game, it changed everything because, as you pointed out, Arkansas could sell out against the run. Brian Maurer, let Brian Maurer beat you with his arm. He's never done that to anybody before so far in his early career. And so, for Barry Odom, that was a good move. But the defense just absolutely just didn't show up there after the halftime, and that's inexcusable. So you couple that, Garantano goes out of the ball game, and Tennessee's offense didn't look spectacular, but it controlled the football game. It ran the football effectively. It converted on 4 of 7 for third downs in the first half, which was really good. But then you finish it anywhere from 5 for 16. That's not so good in the second half, but it controlled the clock. Those were my 2 keys of the game coming into that game, were win third downs and control the clock, because Arkansas and Tennessee were both the worst in the SEC in both of those statistics. And it did that. But, when the defense allowed Arkansas back in the ball game and then allowed them to take a double-digit lead in the third quarter, and then Garantano goes out, Tennessee's just not a good enough football team to overcome that. Harrison Bailey, I mean, he did some nice things, but he comes in there, last little bit of the fourth quarter, has a couple of drives, and his first pass attempt, you're asking him to throw a pass on 4th and 3 with the game on the line. I think that's a little, when you should have been kicking a 42-yard field goal after your kicker made a 50 and a 48 already in this game. I think that was a bad coaching there. And then, his last interception of the game, he was just trying to force it, just trying to find a score. And so, still haven't seen enough from Harrison Bailey for me to get a feel for him, because he hadn't played a whole lot. I don't hold anything he did against Arkansas against him, but Tennessee's just not good enough right now. And everything kind of has to click. Everything kind of has to go well. And though it might have been a boring game in the first half, that's Tennessee's game right now. That's how Tennessee's going to win. And if Tennessee wants to have a chance against Auburn, it's going to have to run the football, hold on to the football, and eat clock up as much as it can.
Yeah, and that first half, Tennessee should have been up about 21-0 at halftime, because they had 3 possessions in the first half, and I think you mentioned that it wasn't sexy when you compare Tennessee's offense to what Lane Kiffin is doing right now, or what Alabama or some of these other offenses are doing in the SEC right now. Florida going outside of the SEC and looking at Hugh Freeze, as everybody likes to do right now. Tennessee's offense is not anywhere in the ballpark of being sexy like those offenses, but they still dominated Arkansas in that first half offensively, and they were really effective. A 16-play drive, an 18-play drive, if I remember correctly, and you should have come away with more points. You had the touchdown where Eric Grace scored a 1-yard rushing touchdown to begin the second quarter, but on the previous drive, their first of the game, Tennessee was driving deep into Arkansas territory, and a Trey Smith holding penalty backed them up, and this offense just is not good enough to overcome long distances on any down, quite frankly, first, second, or third. And then later in the first half, you were driving once again on the second Brent Smaglia field goal. Darnell Wright has a false start, and that kills the drive, because once again, even though it's a 5-yard penalty, this offense is just not good enough to overcome any type of negative yardage that puts them behind the line of scrimmage, or behind the sticks rather. And at the end of the day, I think you'll agree with me on this. Jeremy Pruitt in year 3, COVID year or not, just simply cannot lose to a first-year head coach that took over a program that had lost 20 straight SEC games. You just can't lose that football game coming off of a bye week, adding even more fuel to the fire. So just an unacceptable loss. And I want to ask you about the quarterbacks, and you touched on it there for a minute. I thought since, what was it, the Kentucky debacle, I truly think that Jarrett's played decent football. Again, when you kind of recognize what he is and what his game and his potential is, I think he's played up to that potential. Again, he's not necessarily somebody you want to be your starting quarterback, because he does limit your offense, but he played well against Alabama. He was efficient and protected the football against Alabama, and against Arkansas, he was really efficient in the first half. Picked up third downs when you needed him to. I believe he was 3 of 3 passing on third down, picked up 2 first downs, and then he also picked up a third down with his legs. So he's coming off of a concussion, did not practice last week, did practice on Sunday. Jeremy Pruitt told the media that on Monday. Today, when you look at the quarterback position, Eric, what would you do going forward if you are in charge? Because if I was in charge, I'm only playing Jarrett Guarantano and Harrison Bailey the rest of the season unless injury forces me to do otherwise.
Oh, 100%. 100. There does not need to be another quarterback on this roster taking a snap unless injury concerns, as you pointed out. And Ben, you're talking about Guarantano kind of evaluating his play. Let me take it a game back further in this timeline. Let's go back to Georgia. Was it a debacle? Absolutely. Did I get, crapped on air and on social media for a week for saying this? Absolutely. It was not. I mean, is there fault there for Guarantano? Absolutely.
It wasn't his fault only.
100%. The offensive line, the tackles in particular, and we all know about Georgia's front seven. I think Ojulari is a phenomenal talent. He was SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Quite frankly, he absolutely whipped Wanya Morris all game long. Jarrett was moving the pocket, got the ball poked out of him one time. You got to have better ball security. I get that, but that is Wanya Morris. The strip sack, scoop and score for a touchdown. Eric Gray whiffed on a block. Guarantano never saw it coming. Okay, never saw it. Wasn't giving a chance. And people might say, well, you need to have awareness. I mean, I hear you, but there was not. I mean, it's not like he was back there for 5 seconds.
Right.
The interception when he rolled out to the left, that was a bad throw. That was a bad decision, but he still had 2 guys in his face.
And even on that, Jeremy Pruitt has admitted that Eric Gray ran the wrong hot route. So it was an ill-advised throw from JG. Just take the sack in that situation and live to play another down. But it just wasn't him that was failing. He did fail. He did not perform well. But it was also the offensive line, as you mentioned on that particular interception. He had 2 guys in his face, and then the running back didn't run the correct route and wasn't where JG thought he would be. So I'm with you. I went through that same process that week, and I was kind of fed up with the narrative, the simpleton narrative, in my opinion, that it was only Jarrett Guarantano. Jarrett did not play well, but the offense as a whole did not play well, and I thought it had more to do with Georgia's defense. You mentioned Azeez Ojulari. Jordan Davis, their nose tackle, destroyed Brandon Kennedy and was constantly pushing the pocket and just blowing up plays in the running game.
Yeah. So, I mean, Guarantano did not play well in that game, absolutely, but it was a total team effort. We know about Kentucky, just that was so
one
bad.
Was solely on him.
Yep, solely on him. But you're right, against Alabama. Did he play well enough to win you the football game? No, it's Alabama. Did he play bad enough for you to lose the game? No, it's Alabama. I thought he was okay. I thought he was okay against Arkansas. So you're right. When you simplify the game, when you recognize the strengths, which is for him throwing the deep ball, and stuff like that, when you realize what he can do for you and what he can absolutely hurt you with, he's the best option for this team. Now in evaluating what to do heading into Auburn, I'm a big believer in during the off week, you open that thing up for competition. The best man, takes over, and it was Guarantano again. With him being out the last 2 weeks now, last week in preparation for what should have been Texas A&M, and now this week, which he is back to practice this week. It's the same thing for me. If Harrison Bailey's been taking all the 1 reps, and Jeremy Pruitt raved about him on Monday, talking about how his command was better, his confidence is a lot better, and that the guys are seeing that and taking note of it. But if Harrison Bailey's balling out at practice right now, then, for me, there's no reason not to go ahead and play him. But if he's not, you've got to go back to Guarantano, because he is, quite frankly, your best option to win football games. I understand wanting to be prepared for 2021. I certainly get that from the fans' perspective, but newsflash, Jeremy Pruitt does not care about 2021. He cares about getting win number 3 and then win number 4 and then win number 5. And
he's got to find a way to find some wins to end the season.
Yes,
more
exactly.
Than just Vanderbilt.
So we'll have to see. I think it will be Guarantano if he's cleared, but if Harrison Bailey really has come alive here at practice this last little bit, and of course you and I are not there to see it anymore this year, then it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Harrison Bailey earlier today when Jeremy Pruitt met with the media on Monday. This was the first time that Jeremy didn't stand up and say, Jarrett's my guy no matter what. Now, I know he's dealing with a concussion, and I know that he might not be, cleared and ready to go and, up to speed on practice by the time it's game time. But, this was the first time he's never really said, Jarrett's our guy, Jarrett's our quarterback, yada, yada. I mean, he raved about Harrison Bailey. So it was kind of interesting. So, we'll have to see. But ultimately, I do think both of those guys will play, even if it is Harrison Bailey starting, Guarantano coming off the bench. Last year when they started Brian Maurer, last year when they started JT Shrout, those first couple of series that he was in, those were all scripted plays. And then you brought in Guarantano. When Juwan Jennings made that first start for the series in the Wildcats, scripted plays. Then Guarantano came in. You might see something like that if Harrison Bailey starts, but you will see Guarantano as well. So I think it'll be both those guys. Just right now, honestly, I don't know who will start.
I think it's going to be Jarrett Guarantano because immediately after those positive comments about Harrison Bailey, Pruitt immediately talked about how Jarrett had a good day of practice on Sunday, his first practice back. So I thought that was an indication that Jarrett will start on Saturday against Auburn. And
I'm a betting man now in Tennessee, so I would bet Guarantano as well for sure.
I'm with you. Shame on the Ravens for losing me money on Sunday Night Football. I need the Vikings to bounce back and cover against the Bears on Monday Night Football. We'll see how that plays out. But to put a bow on the quarterback conversation, I've been saying this for weeks, and I imagine that you will agree with me on this. I don't blame Jeremy Pruitt for any in-season quarterback decision he has made. I think, when to pull JG, who to start, bringing in Harrison Bailey after Brian Maurer against Arkansas. I think he and Jim Chaney and Chris Winkie, whoever truly makes that decision and whoever has input, T. Martin maybe, whoever has made those decisions, obviously Pruitt is involved in those conversations and has the ultimate final answer, ultimate decision. I don't think he's made a bad decision in season of who is playing quarterback. I blame him for allowing Tennessee to be in this position. And this goes back to the offseason. He failed over the offseason to have his football team in a position to succeed at the most important position in sports. Sure, hindsight is 2020. And look, I'll be the first to admit that I bought into the potential of Jarrett Guarantano in year number 2 of Jim Chaney's system. I thought that we would see an improved JG. I didn't think he was going to go out and win the Heisman or anything like that, but I did think he was going to be a solid quarterback who didn't lose you football games. And quite frankly, we've seen that Jarrett Guarantano outside of the Kentucky game and parts of the Georgia game. I still expected him to be more efficient. So I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong there. I thought year 2 under Chaney, step forward. We have not seen that. And yes, hindsight is 2020, but Pruitt should have gone out and gotten a transfer quarterback because and the excuse that, they're bringing in 5-star Harrison Bailey is not valid because even before Harrison Bailey signed, before COVID was ever a thing, this staff didn't feel like Harrison Bailey was going to step on campus and play from day one. They've always felt, even when they recruited him, that he was going to need time to develop. So hindsight 2020, Pruitt should have gone out and gotten a quarterback, Eric. So I don't blame him for any in-season quarterback decisions, but it was a complete failure on his part to address the quarterback situation over the offseason with a transfer quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. There's a reason why number 2 continues to trot out there time after time after time. It's because no one else is better. I think Harrison Bailey will be better. Right now, I don't think he is, simply because – and everyone's in the same boat. Everyone didn't have a spring practice. Everyone's fall camp was a little bit different. But even for Tennessee, with all the contact tracing and all those guys out that were missing in fall camp, Tennessee normally would go 4-spot, which means all 4 of your quarterbacks would rep. Tennessee was only able to go 2-spot for the duration of camp, which means Guarantano got all those reps, but JT Shrout, Brian Maurer, and Harrison Bailey were all fighting and splitting time with that second team. So that hinders a Harrison Bailey. So I think Harrison Bailey is more talented, will be a better quarterback. And, maybe the start of his career really is taking off, maybe this week, who knows? But, for right now, there's a reason number 2 continues to go out there time after time. So I'm with you. I don't fault whatsoever, playing Guarantano this season. The crime here is the lack of development. And that goes directly to 1, Chris Winkie, 2, Jim Chaney, and ultimately your head coach and Jeremy Pruitt.
And going back to Tyson Helton, if we're being honest, because it's development and decision-making in recruiting, because you could have had Michael Penix, who is starring at Indiana right now. I know this is a played-out conversation amongst Vol fans. I get it. It's frustrating, but Tennessee would have had Michael Penix if Tyson Helton hadn't handpicked JT Shrout. Sam House, the quarterback at North Carolina right now, was very interested in Tennessee.
Yep.
Tennessee chose to go after Brian Maurer. So not only development, Eric, but decision-making dating back all the way to Tyson Helton has also screwed Tennessee.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of factors in there, but at the end of the day, for me, I just can't sit here. And I know COVID plays a factor and all, but I'm tired of that conversation because it's played a factor with everyone. There's no excuse when you look at JT Shroud, regardless of which coach has been on campus, which system you're running. JT Shroud is a third-year quarterback. Quite frankly, to be not as productive as he is right now, there's no excuse. Brian Maurer, second-year guy in the system. Why is he not ready? And so, the lack of development, I think, is the real issue here. So whenever two trots out there, I get it. But the issue at hand is you should never be in that position to where Kentucky, why'd you wait so long to pull them? Maybe even South Carolina. I think without Garantano, Tennessee doesn't win that South Carolina game, but he was not at his best that day. In other incidences over the last couple of years of his career, I think that's where the true shortcomings have fallen right there in development.
I'm with you, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way. I think Harrison Bailey has a chance to be a good quarterback for Tennessee. I truly do. But I think the answer to the quarterback position is going to arrive in about a month and a half. And I think
I talked to him last week.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing him up. And he's a guy that I am very high on. If you listen to the Swain event, myself and Jason Swain are very high on Caden Salter. And I think he is ultimately going to prove to be the answer at quarterback for Tennessee. Again, that's not a slight to Harrison Bailey whatsoever. I think Harrison Bailey has the chance to be the starting quarterback here. I think he has the potential to be a good quarterback for Tennessee. But me personally, I like the style of quarterback that Caden Salter is, the playmaking style of quarterback that we are seeing taking over the NFL and taking over college football. I like that style better than the style of Harrison Bailey. I'll say it again. That's not a deterrent on Harrison Bailey. Does not mean that he won't be successful. He's just more of a pocket passer, and you're not seeing as many pocket passer in today's game at really any level. But I'm really high on Caden Salter. You talked to him recently, as you just mentioned. What were kind of your takeaways from speaking to him for VolQuest?
Yeah, he's 100% locked in. He tweeted out, I think it was the Monday after the loss to Alabama, that, hey, no matter what, I'm 100% locked in. I called him and said, I know you tweeted this, but are you really locked in? He said the same thing. And, he said, it doesn't matter what any, fan on Twitter says, anybody, in everyday conversation says, nothing anybody can say is going to change my mind. I'm ready to go. I want to commit to a program, make my own legacy, and I want to jump on board someone else's. And so, he's a Pruitt guy. He likes Pruitt. He likes Chaney. He believes in the system. He loves the fact that Tennessee plays the best players. He said, listen, this is the SEC. There's going to be some good games. There's going to be some bad games. And he's like, but I like that. I like the fact that Tennessee's trying to find the best players and put them out there. And, what I took away from that is he believes he can make an impact as soon as he gets here. But he's kind of that new age quarterback, kind of the guy that can throw the football, has tremendous ability throwing the football without a doubt, but can extend plays, running the football, getting out of the pocket, stuff like that. Use his athletic ability to really be a plus for this offense. And we kind of thought Jerry Garantano was going to be that coming out of high school. I mean, he was the second-ranked dual threat quarterback in the country, and though he has had some nice scrambles this year, not going to lie.
Garrett Lamar, Garantano.
Michael Vick, what? Certainly is not a dual threat quarterback. So I like the upside of Caden Salter. He's ready to go. He's going to be enrolling here in a couple of months, as you said. He's ready to get to work in what we hope will be a normal spring. And, he's good. He has a good relationship with some of the quarterbacks. He talked to me about that. And he says he talks to the Tennessee coaching staff literally every single day. And so he's all.
There's a reason for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially when things aren't going so well. You can't afford to take a day off if you're the Tennessee coaching staff. But
well, not only that in terms of continuing to recruit him, but to get him ready for next season potentially.
Yeah, for sure. He's all Vol, and he's ready to get here. So that's good, great news for Tennessee fans.
Yeah, I'll give you my take that I kind of had last weekend, not this past weekend, but the first weekend of Pac-12 football in the first weekend, or not the first weekend, but the weekend that Liberty upset Virginia Tech. That day, I was watching the noon slate of games before Tennessee, Arkansas, Eric, and I was watching Arizona State, USC. I was keeping an eye on Indiana, Michigan, and I was watching Liberty, Virginia Tech. I have 2 TVs in my living room. I had one TV, Virginia Tech, Liberty, other
Right
TV,
house,
USC, Arizona State. Yeah, whatever. And, you know, Liberty was going up against a bigger brand of football in Virginia Tech. Indiana was facing a bigger name in Michigan. And Arizona State was facing a bigger name in USC. And Arizona State lost, should have won. They choked that game away. Indiana pulled off the upset. Liberty pulled off the upset. And the common denominator in Arizona State, Liberty, and Indiana competing with those bigger brands of football, the more established football schools, was the quarterback position. Jane Daniels at Arizona State is an absolute stud. Michael Penix at Indiana is an absolute stud. Malik Willis at Liberty is an absolute stud. And because they are playmakers at the quarterback position and not just your traditional prototypical quarterback, they were able to upset Michigan and Virginia Tech, and USC should have been upset by Arizona State. And watching that should give Tennessee fans hope, because that is what Tennessee, at least on paper, and the tools when he arrives, that's what Tennessee is getting in Kaidon Salter. That is exactly what Tennessee is getting in Kaidon Salter. And look, he needs to develop into those guys. I'm not saying that he'll have the same career, I'm not trying to do that whatsoever, but just in terms of style of play, it was like watching Kaidon Salter on his high school film. So I think that should give Tennessee fans a lot of hope moving forward, is that you see these similar style of quarterbacks already in college really competing against some bigger brands of football. Tennessee should be able to do the same with Kaidon Salter, assuming that he develops properly, which you just outlined has been an issue under Jeremy Pruitt. But I don't think it will be as big of an issue under Jim Chaney when he gets his quarterback recruit in here and it's only his thumbprint on Kaidon Salter.
Yeah, this is his guy. This is Jim Chaney's guy. He is
handpicked.
This is the quarterback Jim Chaney has picked, and so he'll be ready to roll. And so, you know, not everyone's Josh Dobbs. So think about all the deficiencies that Josh Dobbs was able to overcome here at Tennessee. The offensive line was not great when Josh Dobbs was here. That, you know, going to extending plays, overcompensating. I'm not saying that Kaidon Salter is going to come in here and run for 150 yards on the average like Josh Dobbs did, from what, at least from what it seems like he did against, you know, the Floridas, the Georgias, the Alabamas, and had them in those football games, but able to overcompensate for, you know, lack of a running game, you know, lack of receiving, lack of offensive line a little bit. Those type of playmakers at the quarterback position, they can also throw a nice football. Is kind of, again, that new era of football that we're in, both the high school realm, college realm, seeing in the NFL a little bit too. There was a MVP of the league last year, the National Football League, that is this type of quarterback. So really excited to see what he can do. Yeah, well, you know, my Titans got him there in the second round last year, so tighten up. But both teams have really fallen since then. But anyway, by the way, your Steelers, man, 9-0. Oh,
yes, sir. We'll be 10-0 after this weekend.
I really thought that with no Big Ben that he wouldn't come and throw 4 touchdowns, but he did yesterday.
Because Big Ben needs to have more conversation surrounding his name about being the league MVP. This is the same exact Steelers team that went 8-8 last season. The only difference is Big Ben is healthy, and they are 9-0, going to be 10-0 after they beat the Jaguars this weekend, and are one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl.
I know we're talking Tennessee football, but outside of Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin is without a doubt the best coach in the AFC. Yep. I'm a big Mike Tomlin guy. Last year, when they finished 8-8 with 4th string quarterback, you serious? I mean,
if I have to watch Devlin Duck Hodges ever play football again,
dude, we have Ramon Foster. We have Ramon Foster on our airwaves twice a week now, and he's got some good Zug stories he's already told. It's pretty funny.
I'm glad that Devlin is a great teammate and fun to be around, and everybody loves him. But if I have to ever watch him play football again, mercy me, help me, and pray for me. But back to Tennessee football. I know nobody wants to hear about my Pittsburgh Steelers. Swain event listeners already have to hear about it. enough. But hey, it's the first time literally ever the Steelers have been 9-0, and will be the first time they're 10-0 after they beat the Jaguars. The quarterback position has dominated this podcast, and I know people are tired of hearing about the quarterback position, but I do believe it is the biggest hurdle and factor that is holding Tennessee football back right now. The other one is leadership, both from the coaches and within the players. That's a separate conversation. But speaking of the quarterbacks and moving into another hot topic, Jim Chaney and Jeremy Pruitt. And if Jeremy Pruitt is handcuffing Jim Chaney, that's been a popular rumor and talking point amongst Vol Twitter and Vol fans everywhere. What do you believe is handicapping the offense? Do you believe it's simply the quarterback position, or do you think Pruitt is maybe overstepping his boundaries, or how would you assess that talking point about Jeremy Pruitt handcuffing Jim Chaney?
Well, it's funny. Honestly, I'm in the minority here. I don't buy into it, and I've got a guy.
Either.
I've got a cohort on the morning show over on the Sports Animal that continually says, make comments about how Pruitt is handcuffing Chaney, and I try to fight that battle all the time. Pruitt has consistently said comments like, well, not consistently, but you remember after the Kentucky game, I didn't much like the play call, on that throwing across the field for that one of those pick sixes. He said last week that we've continuously tried to be more aggressive each and every week, and we continue to have conversations about that every week about being more aggressive. Just from those two comments right there leads me to believe that, Jeremy Pruitt is involved, but he's not heavily involved in the schematics and the play calling
and
on
after
the offensive side of the football.
And to cut you off real quick, a third comment after the Arkansas game, Pruitt said that Tennessee needs to, I think it was after the Arkansas game. Never mind. It was last week during Vol calls. Sorry. Last week during Vol calls, Pruitt said that Chaney, he didn't say Chaney specifically, but he said that we need to run the plays that we practice. That kind of made my eyeballs pop out of my head.
And so, I don't really buy into it right now. I just think that, Jim Chaney believes that he is severely handcuffed with what he has at quarterback. And rightfully so, because there's a lot of things Jerry Garantano cannot do. But, overall, I have not been the biggest fan of Jim Chaney's play calling a lot this year. Too conservative in certain situations. Sometimes they'll start out during the 2-minute drill before the half. Sometimes they'll start out conservative and then they'll throw a couple passes, then complete them, and then go back conservative. Makes no sense. Certain situations on, throwing across the field or throwing on 3rd and 8 when you're in 4-down territory, but then you punt it. Just silly stuff like that. And I know a lot of that has to do with the head coach as well when it comes into special teams, when to punt, when to kick a field goal. But, Jim Chaney, I truly do believe he is handcuffed with the quarterback that he's got, and he's trying to call a game to where Jerry Garantano can't lose it. And to me, as Jeremy Pruitt said after the Missouri game, you can't coach scared. You got to go out there and you've got to play hard. You got to coach hard. And I think sometimes, I don't want to say that Jim Chaney's, play calling is scared, but it's very, very limited right now. And, you're not going to win a football game like that at all. But as far as the narrative about Pruitt handcuffing Chaney, I don't believe that whatsoever. I do buy into it a little bit with Tyson Helton 2 years ago. But
I don't buy into it. I know for a fact it happened. That 2018 Vandy game, year one, Pruitt was standing on the sideline with the play sheet.
But with Jim Chaney, a guy that's been around here for 5 decades, no. I think this is Jim Chaney and Jim Chaney only.
Yes, and look, I don't think Jim Chaney has been good this year. I don't think he has received a passing grade, but I also think Jim Chaney's issues are a result of having Jerry Garantano as his quarterback. Yep. I think this offense has severely limited what Jim Chaney can call, and not just Jerry Garantano. They don't have any receivers that can get open. The tight end position, the tight end position is non-existent. It might as well not even be listed on Tennessee's roster. And then Tennessee's offensive line has underperformed. And I think a large part of that, people won't like this and they'll say it's an excuse and whatnot, but the offensive line has not been healthy whatsoever. Wanya Morris coming off of a hip injury and practically missed all of fall camp. How do you get better in that situation?
If you remember, he missed all offseason too.
Yep, because of the hip, coming off the hip surgery.
Yep, exactly. So,
how do you get better?
From his last game, he had done, obviously no one did spring practice or anything, but from his last game, the first practice he had in pads getting ready to go was game week at South Carolina. I mean, he was in quarantine twice. So you're right. How do you get better? Jerome Carvin, who I think is a good football player, but he has been banged up with that turf toe all year long. Jameer Johnson, bone bruise. Wanya Morris, ankle injury. Trey Smith is nowhere near 100% right now. Yeah.
Labrum, elbow, knee.
Yeah. And
Riley Locklear hasn't played at all this year because of injury, and he had surgery that cost him his season. The only two that have been healthy really are Darnell Wright and Darnell Wright, Cade Mays, and Brandon Kennedy. And Kennedy and Wright haven't played great football this year.
No, they haven't. The tackles have really not been good at all year. I think the interior, when it's a Mays Smith, Kennedy, the interior's been okay. I think Cade has struggled a little bit playing tackle at times, but they want that line of that interior, Morris and Wright. And I think Darnell Wright has improved. I thought, he was really bad at the beginning of the season. I think he's gotten better as the year's gone on. Slightly. It's still not where he needs to be for sure. But it's so weird too, because Wanya Morris, after the Missouri game, I've been on record a couple of times saying, when I went and did my rewatch, I think Wanya Morris in the first half was the best football player on the field for Missouri and Tennessee. Wanya Morris, I'm not saying if you want to go back and watch the first half against Missouri, if you have that time of free time, he was incredible. On Tennessee's 2 touchdowns he scored in that half, it was because of his kick out blocks. He moved the ball well. He moved well. He ran to the second level and all that. But for him to take that performance and then translate it to Georgia was just so disheartening. And so anyway, that's just an example of him being so hot and cold. But a lot of the reason is because he simply has not played at all, except for in the games. He didn't practice at all.
Yeah. And you saw the offensive line as healthy as it's been against Arkansas, and they dominated Arkansas for much of that game. The only time that they did not dominate was when, like we spoke about earlier, is when Jarrett Guarantano left the game and Arkansas just completely sold out on stopping the run. And I don't care what offensive line you have, that is a tall task to open up holes in the running game and keep your quarterback protected when the other team has just completely sold out on stopping the run and pressuring the quarterback. That is a tall task. So offensive line is healthy again going into this Auburn game, Eric, and Auburn's defense and pass rush kind of got going against LSU, but it's against a miserable LSU team. That Auburn defensive front has struggled for much of this season, and I know people are down in the dumps and, there's no chance that Tennessee beats Auburn. I still don't think that Auburn is a good football team. I truly don't. They are a top 25 team. They have that pretty number 23 next to their name. They have that 4-2 record, but you look at 4 wins. The LSU win, kudos for your performance in that game. But in terms of evaluating you as a whole, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a ton of credit for that because LSU is pure trash. They are butt booty terrible. I mean, LSU should be playing in the MAC this year, not the SEC. So LSU, I'm sorry, I'm not giving Auburn a ton of credit for that win. That's one of their 4. And then 2 of their 4, the Arkansas game and the Ole Miss game, there were incidents at the end of that game where the SEC had to come out and say that they got the call wrong in the game, and had they gotten it right, Auburn loses to Ole Miss and loses to Arkansas. And then if you want to go back to the first game of the season when they played Kentucky, Kentucky was the better football team for 3 quarters and just shot themselves in the foot each and every possession, it felt like.
And it wasn't there a controversial pick 6 call in that game as well?
Yes. And technically the pick 6 didn't count, but on the play, because that was the pick 6 right before halftime, and it got called back for like a blocking in the back or something along those lines. But the play before that, Kentucky was like 3 yards into the end zone for a touchdown, and the official overturned it and said that he didn't get into the end zone, but the ball was clearly in the end zone. So really, Auburn should have three losses out of those 4 wins, in my opinion. So, look, I said it earlier, I'm not going to pick Tennessee to beat Auburn, but I do think that there is potential to win this football game. I can see you're over there wanting to say something about this football game. I want to ask you about Tennessee's defense before we talk about the Auburn game to get out of here. We spent so much time talking about the offense. So save those thoughts on the Tennessee-Auburn game this Saturday. Monday, it was announced by Jeremy Pruitt that Sean Schamberger will not play the remainder of the season because of academic issues, a.k.a. he's in the doghouse, has been in the doghouse all season long, but he will no longer play. And quite frankly, I think that's a good thing for Tennessee, both from an on-the-field product. I think it's better to get somebody else at that star position, and an off-the-field product, and maybe best for him to not be around the team. There's a reason he's been in the doghouse since Jeremy Pruitt got here. Again, he was one of the players in that Vanderbilt game we talked about earlier in year one that was dancing on the sideline as Tennessee was being embarrassed by Vanderbilt. So to be quite honest, if I'm being dead honest, I think it's a good thing that Sean Schamberger is not going to play the remainder of the season. But to talk a little bit about the defense before we get out of here, Eric, what are your thoughts on Sean Schamberger not being available for the rest of the season? And if Tennessee is going to be able to pick off an Auburn, a Texas A&M, a Florida, what needs to change the most defensively? Because Lord knows there's a laundry list of issues.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the same conversation every week. In order for Tennessee to, to be in one of these contests and in position to pull off an upset, you're going to have to create turnovers. Tennessee has been so bad at creating turnovers. Tennessee has one interception this year. That is so hard to believe at this stage in the season. I mean, how in the world have you not just had one land in your lap already? So it's really bad. But a lot of the reason why
they just drop them all.
Yeah, Kenneth George Jr. A lot of the reason why you're not picking off passes is because you're not getting a rush up front, and so it all ties in. Nigel Warrior said it last year during a player availability, and I quote him all the time when I say this because I get it. I 100% get it. It's all tied in. Your back four is as good as your front four, and right now Tennessee's front four is not good, and Tennessee's back four is not good enough to overcompensate for it as well. So you've got to create turnovers. You've got to mix some things up. You got to get out of man coverage. Jeremy Pruitt and Derek Ansley, though they will switch it up every now and then, they are so prideful. They are so prideful on playing man, especially on the outside. Right now, you're just not good enough to do that. And, you're not good enough to do that against the Alabamas and the Georgias, and you won't be against the Floridas here in 2 weeks, maybe the A&Ms. Maybe you can get away with it a little bit against the Auburns and the Arkansas, but you got to mix and match some zone in there as well. And when you play zone, you can bring some zone pressure. I think Sean Schamberger, though he won't be with us the rest of the season, Sean Schamberger is a great zone blitzer. He's had a couple of sacks in his career, and they'll bring him.
Great zone blitzer.
Yeah, was a great zone blitzer.
Awful this year.
But, doing some more stuff like that. And so, we'll have to see. You got to create some more turnovers, got to get it from all three levels. But in terms of replacing Schamberger, since we're on that subject, I think when he's on, he's a good football player, but he has not been on this season. He was behind the A-ball from the get-go. He missed the first, the first 2 games of the season. Yep. And, Tennessee's secondary hasn't had the same 5 back there to start, but, only once in consecutive games. I mean, it's been a train wreck essentially. And so, a lot of that has to do with Sean Schamberger. He's been slow. He's had a couple of busted coverages to the lack of communication. He's just not had a good year at all. And maybe that's from lack of preparation in the offseason. Maybe that's a lack of practicing in camp and during the season. Whatever the case is, it's not been good for Schamberger. So with him out of the picture now, you insert Theo Jackson, who I think is a guy that everybody needs on their team, but you want to get in Key Lawrence. You want Keyshawn Lawrence to play that star spot. He's been practicing there for the last 3 weeks. Maybe now it's time for him to step up and maybe start into that starting role at that star position, because Theo Jackson's a guy that can do it, has done it a lot, but doesn't have the athletic intangibles that a Key Lawrence might have. And so I look for 14 to get a lot of run there at the star. I also look for Tamarion McDonald to play some at the safety spot. Those are kind of the 2 names in the secondary that have been thrown around a lot the last couple of weeks as far as young guys. And both guys were kind of behind the A-ball to begin with. McDonald was hurt, didn't think he's going to be playing at all this year, and here he is now appearing in the last 2 games. And Keyshawn Lawrence went from safety to cornerback, now to star. They're just trying to find him a spot. And he was one of the top-rated guys in the state coming out of in that recruiting class last year. So anyway, I look for those two guys to really improve. And one more thing too, Henry T is a great football player. I think he continues to get better and better, but he has a long way to go in terms of being a complete linebacker, and that's okay. He's still young. What he does well, he does very well. But he struggles in covering the pass. He struggles outside of the box, and he has no help around him. Quite frankly, Quavaris Crouch and Jeremy Banks have been awful, just awful this year, and that doesn't help him out a lot either. But Tennessee's defense has a lot of issues. I just rattled through a lot of those, but hopefully the last couple games of the season, you can start to see better play from the front four that'll impact the back four, and you'll start seeing some turnovers because you got to steal some possessions for Tennessee to be in these ball games because Tennessee's offense just isn't good enough to, go back and forth trading touchdowns.
Oh, and by the way, 2 out of the 4 remaining opponents, their offenses are 2 of the best in the entire country in Texas A&M and Florida. So good luck. Oh, and the other offense, Auburn, while Gus Malzahn may always get in his own way, Bo Nix, very athletic, can beat you with his legs, and Seth Williams is arguably the best receiver in the SEC, one of the best in the SEC. Anthony Schwartz, really good. Eli Stove, really good. Good luck.
Also, Bo Nix, though started the season off poorly, has played really, really, really not good, but he's played great the last 2 games. So he's kind of on the upward tick as well. So he's nowhere. He's not a Kyle Trask.
No. I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
He's playing better.
The previous 2 opponents for Auburn and the performances that you are alluding to, you know what defenses those were against?
LSU and
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Yeah, Ole Miss is not great on defense.
Not great. That's nice.
Listen, I'm not saying
Tennessee's defense is bad. That Ole Miss and LSU's defense makes Tennessee's defense look like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. You ain't kidding. I mean, I thought about that over the weekend. I'm like, gosh, that's some bad defensive play. I'm just saying he is improving to where he was just abysmal the first 4 weeks of the season. At least he's got that confidence up, that being for Bo Nix.
I think Bo Nix has the tools. I think he has a Gus Malzahn problem. I think if you swap Bo Nix and Malik Willis, the quarterback at Liberty, and I say Malik Willis because he transferred from Auburn, and Malik Willis is now having great success. I think if you put Malik Willis back at Auburn, I think he's not having success, and I think if you put Bo Nix with Hugh Freeze, Bo Nix is having even more success than Malik Willis is. So I think Bo Nix has a Gus Malzahn problem, not a Bo Nix problem, which has always been the case with Gus Malzahn and quarterbacks. He has yet to recruit a quarterback out of high school, sign him, and develop him into a really good quarterback. All of his quarterbacks have been transfers. Or Cam Newton, who is a once-in-a-generational talent, and he even signed out of JUCO and would have been at Florida had he not stolen a laptop. So Gus Malzahn, maybe the quarterback, maybe not the quarterback guru that we think that he is. But on the way out the door, I kind of nipped your Auburn thoughts right in the bud there a moment ago. So your thoughts on Tennessee's game against Auburn, and I guess how winnable do you think this is for Tennessee?
Yeah, I'll be short and sweet. The defense isn't great, but it's a defense that's starting to play a little bit better in the front 7. Nonetheless, I think there's going to be an opportunity to run the football, control the clock, and kind of have that same type of game plan you saw against Arkansas, especially if Garantano's in the ball game. So I think there's opportunity there. Offensively, though, you pointed out that the 2 opponents in Ole Miss and LSU, not great. But the last two times Auburn's been out there, but mind you, too, Auburn, hasn't played since October 31st. Granted, Tennessee's only played 1 time since October 31st, but it's been a while since Auburn's been out there and played. But nonetheless, Bo Nix is playing better. He's completing over 77% of his passes in those 2 ball games. He's not had a turnover at all. The offensive line's gotten healthier. You're getting better offensive line play. Therefore, you're getting better Bo Nix play. Those receivers you pointed out, Jeremy Pruitt coined Anthony Schwartz as the fastest guy in college football today. So that's going to be a challenge for Tennessee's secondary. Some other guys out there that, that they've got, Bigsby in the backfield. They've got another running back that like to play in there. So, they're creative with their offense, but this team is just, it's a team that's nationally ranked number 23 overall, 4-2, that should really be probably 3-3. Maybe even 2-4. This is not a good football team.
Maybe 1-5.
Yeah, Tennessee's not a good football team. I think Tennessee very much has a chance to win this football game, but nothing in the last month. Tennessee's shown me nothing in the last month that makes me believe I'm going to pick them to win this football game. They just haven't. It's interesting because I have this conversation a lot. Like when you cover a team, it's tough to, we like to play these games on Fridays, picking against the spread. I'll never personally bet on Tennessee ever, but just for fun on the show, we'll pick against the spread and all that. And it's tough picking Tennessee because you cover the team, the strengths, the weaknesses, the deficiencies about the next opponent. And so, if Tennessee does this well, Tennessee will win or vice versa. So it's kind of hard. Like, that Tennessee can win this game if it plays well, of course, but it just hasn't done remotely that in the last month. And so, Tennessee's a 10.5-point dog going on the road. I'm going to pick Auburn to win this, but I think if the Vols control the clock, win third down, create turnovers, all the normal coach talk stuff, I mean, Tennessee will be right there in it because I do not think Auburn's a good football team. And again, this is a game that you need so desperately. You needed last week 2 weeks ago against Arkansas so desperately. Times that by 10 now. You need this so desperately because if you don't get this game, you are realistically staring 3-7 in the face. I mean, it's that bad. And Vanderbilt put up 35 against Kentucky.
Vanderbilt is playing really hard. And
so
it would be nice to see Tennessee match that intensity.
Yes. So big game coming up. And of course, we'll dive into it as the week goes on. I'll have an extended little MP3 audio I'll put out there on my Twitter on Friday that'll break down the entire matchup with injuries and all that good stuff. So looking forward to it. Hope we get out there. I think we will. I know Auburn's had some COVID scares here of late. Auburn's also going to be short-handed. They'll get some of those guys back, but not everybody, according to Gus Malzahn yesterday to the media. So it'll be interesting, man. I'm just glad to have college football back this weekend, hopefully, fingers crossed, and kind of get back to a normal slate.
I'm with you. I completely agree with your assessment. On the way out the door, give us a score prediction. I know it's Monday. Feels weird giving a score prediction on a Monday, but give us one anyways.
Let's go. I think it's a shootout. Auburn 49, Tennessee 48. No, just kidding.
I was going to say, you think this Tennessee offense is going to score more than 30?
No. Give me Auburn 28, Tennessee 21. That's kind of where I'll peg it right now. That can change. But I do think Tennessee can score. I think Auburn will score, anywhere from 3 to 10 more than the Vols and get that win at home. So we will have to see.
We absolutely will. Eric, how can people follow you and your great work covering Tennessee football?
I wouldn't say it's great, but if you want to see my work,
I'll say it's great. I'll vouch for you.
@_Caner on Twitter. Just follow me there on Twitter. I post my blogs, my podcast, the shows I do, my practice reports, all that good stuff, my articles for VolQuest, all that @_Caner.
Well, Eric, we always appreciate your time here on the podcast. Again, I will vouch for you. You do as good of a job as anybody.
You do as good a job
Tennessee.
as anybody.
That is fake news. I value your opinion in terms of breaking down this team as much as anybody that covers Tennessee, if not more than anybody. So always appreciate your time and opinion here on the podcast.
Ditto, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks again for letting me come on.
Absolutely. He is Eric Kane. I am Ben McKee. We hope you all have a great week, and we will be back with you all later in the week. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.